What if 1 minute a day of movement could completely change your brain chemistry? Well, today I'm joined by fitness expert and author David Amerland, who's been training daily for 47 years. In this episode, we dive into his book, Built to Last, and unpack the real reasons people over 40 struggle with staying fit and how to break through that mental wall. We're talking about mindset shifts, micro workouts, aging with strength, and the one thing even trainers like me often miss or forget about. So if you need a refresher, let's get into it. Real quick, just some updates that are coming up on the Over 40 Fitness podcast show. I've got a real cool guest who's a brand new type of health insurance that has hit the market, that I myself have already canceled my corporate insurance and have switched to this new style. So I'm very excited to get that episode out in a couple months here. And as always, my SKOOL community is ever growing. Check out the link in the show notes. It's where I'm spending all my time with my audience. It's basically a community much like Facebook groups, but a lot more interactive. We have coffee chats. I'll be doing Q&As pretty soon, as well as having other like-minded over 40 people who are interested in, rapid weight loss, longevity, new tech trends coming out. So it's not just me in there. And get in while you can before I hit my first 100 people, because after that, I will be charging to new people only. So let's get on with the episode. David, just like to thank you for coming on the Over 40 Fitness Hacks show. Really excited to hear about your book, this blueprint that you have for people in all stages of their life. For my audience, we're at the 35 to probably 50 age range, but we would definitely want to hear what you got past that too, getting educated and learning from people who've been there. We always like to hear how you even got into this, your different businesses, your book Built to Last. Then we'll start getting into the fun fitness hacks you got. So I'll let you take it away.
That sounds really good. I'm really excited to be here. So thank you very much, Brad. All right, where to begin from, right? First of all, fitness. I've always been fit. I got into martial arts when I was 13 and I'm 60 now. So I've been training for 47 years, pretty much every single day of my life. For me, it was my safety valve. It's the one thing that keeps me sane. My parents are moving a lot around. I grew up in Australia. My parents are moving a lot from state to state. So I was getting to new schools, new culture. I was always the outsider. Messes with your head a little bit, right? Yeah. I discovered martial arts by accident and I funneled all my teen rage into it and it helped restructure my thinking. Here I am now, I'm 60, right? And I've got a black belt in Rio Karate. I've got a black belt in WTF Taekwondo. I've got a second degree black belt in ITF Taekwondo. I'm a certified Taekwondo instructor. And this is not what I do. This is the hobby.
How come you're not on the move?
I'm a chemical engineer by training and I got into writing technical books and helped global Fortune 500 companies structure their social media strategy and their marketing and their search strategy. And then later on the decision making. And all these things I've done, and I've got books on all this, right? I've written, this is my 19th book. And it sounds weird because they're all different, but they're not, because it's us, it's our behavior. Why do we do some things? Why don't we do other things? What actually drives us to do something, whether it's business or life or decision making or being intentional in what you do, or in this case, fitness. We all know we should be fit. We all know we need to train. We all know we need to eat well and sleep well and socialize. All these things we know. Built to last, yeah, right, it's a head, right, it's a brain. But built to last is essentially the blueprint on that. And what did I find out? It took me about 3 years of research and development before I wrote the book. We are hardwired to avoid these things because we're the stressors from an evolutionary landscape, which was relatively aggressive towards us. So we tend to avoid anything that we don't absolutely have to do. In the modern world, here's the truth. We don't absolutely have to do anything, right? What we call exercise today is a poor substitute for a life we left behind 6,000 years ago, where we had to run every day, dig for our food, climb to get somewhere, lift something heavy, and sometimes run for our life.
Being nomad, that's not what we're doing right now.
So we had to do all those things. And when we didn't have to do those things, what did we do? Well, this is what we know from anthropological studies today. Anthropologists go in and get embedded in hunter-gatherer tribes that are isolated from civilization. The closest thing we have to Neolithic life. What do they see? They do all those things which are mentioned. And when they don't have to do those things, they do nothing. They just sit around because you need to preserve energy, right? You don't see any hunter-gatherer types going to lift something to get biceps or doing crunches to get six-pack, right? They don't do that.
No, they just rock climb and run.
But when they don't have to do these things, they just sit around. So essentially, we live in the modern world and we just sit around because that's our inclination. That's the ancient part of us. And we now need to get around the little voice in our head that tells us, oh, you don't stress yourself out. You're only burning up energy. How do we do that? I linked my identity and emotionality into what I do. When we work out who we are inside us, and then we work out why we do things, right? And because if we don't know who we are, we can't understand why we do things. If there's no meaning and no emotional connection, it's like We get somebody off the street and we say, you need to be fit, you need to sleep right, you need to eat right. There's logic to it. They can't say, no, I don't need those things. If you say, well, why don't you do them? Well, I haven't got time, life is messy, job, wife, kids, mortgage, all the things we put as obstacles in our head.
Or some people get defeated and say, oh, it's just part of the aging process, natural.
These are the logical things. These logical things have a value, which stops us from doing the hard thing, which is exercising, which is a stressor. But if we add the emotional context to that, then we are forced to reevaluate that value, which means now we see it differently. So if, for example, you say to yourself, okay, how do you see yourself 20 years from now? And you say, well, I'm active, I enjoy life, I can go out with my friends. If I want to go on a 5-mile hike, I can do that. I'm not ill. Nothing is stopping me from having a full life. Okay, if you say that's you 20 years from now, but in order to get to that 20-year later self, the journey starts now. And if you really value how you want to feel, then you're prepared to put in the work now. You're not going to say, I can't do it, or I'm tired, or I'm stressed. What are you going to say? Well, all those things are there because life continues to be messy. But here's my strategy. I'm going to perhaps train an hour a day if I can. But if I can't, what am I going to do? I'm going to do 20 minutes. I'm going to do 10 minutes. I'm going to do 1 minute. And we know from studies that if you do 1 minute of exercise, which sounds like nothing, you do like, sometimes I have just 1 minute in my day. Before I hit the shower, I'm going to do 40 push-ups, 30 squats. Changes in neurochemistry of my blood. We know from studies that the changes which happen at the neurochemical level are the same whether it's 1 minute of exercise or 1 hour of exercise. Which means what? It means that basically the impact of those neurochemicals on our organs, which then secretes specific hormones, which then change the mood of our brain and change the activation of the reward system in the brain, is going to be there.
I remember seeing a study where they had some girl do 30 squats once a day, 7 days for like 3 to 6 months. And they showed proof of the change in the chemistry, the muscle, everything from just that.
If you do 10 push-ups, most people can do 10 push-ups. And even if you can't do proper push-ups, you do them on your knees, it really doesn't matter. If you're going through a push-up phase, at some point of that phase, you've got 67% of your body weight on your upper body. And then you're also activating core, you're activating your legs, the whole kinetic chain gets connected. 10 push-ups are nothing. But if you do them for the whole month, it's 300. And if you're doing it for the whole year, it's almost 4,000. There's absolutely no way you're going to do 4,000 push-ups and you won't see physical changes in your body.
Exactly.
You'll see physical changes in your mind and mood. If you feel them, that's a trick. Then you're prepared to do things differently because your whole outlook changes.
Asking clients when they're first starting out, why couldn't you do this yourself? They make all the excuses with time and all that stuff. It's like, do you know the benefits of this? Absolutely. I need to do it because I want to do this in my 70s, 80s. I'm going to, but they just keep pushing it off. Getting them to start is absolutely the hardest thing. So how do we fix that mindset? Typically what I see is if they listen to a podcast, see a friend go through a drastic change, something has to happen for them to get the mental switch. Okay, and also you need that to happen multiple times to stay on course.
Yeah, great question. Here's what happens in our brain. If we're asked to imagine the future, in order to imagine that future, you have to do something to get there. There's a mechanism in our head which is activated called temporal discounting. Essentially what we do, underestimate the difficulty of the task, of how much work we need in order to be fitter 20 years from now. We also underestimate the value of that fitness because we feel great now. So we can't imagine not feeling great back then, even though logically, if we do nothing, we will not feel great at all. We'll probably be ill. We'll probably be dis-strengthened. Certainly our skeleton will be weakened. Our bones will be less dense. We'll be less capable. But we can't imagine it even though we know it. Because we can't imagine something or we can't imagine it adequately, we don't feel it. And you said if you have a health scare, for instance, you definitely feel it. You'll do everything you can to get past it and become better, healthier, stronger. But then you felt it. This is the emotional impact. And this is where really we need to be smarter because it's our body holding us back for very good reasons, right? In the ancient past, all our resources, all our focus was in the present and survival. Thinking about the future that far ahead was a luxury. And every time we did, we always appeared to be something that'll happen far off. So we didn't have to bother ourselves. But we don't live in that past anymore. We live in the present. So we need to be smarter. In order to be smarter, we need to make that emotional connection with ourselves, which means we need to change on the inside. We need to go deep inside of ourselves and say, okay, who am I really? How do I see myself as a person who has certain physical attributes, certain mental capabilities? And then how much do I value those things because they allow me to enjoy life? And then how much do I value those things going into the future if I'm going to lose some of them? We know from studies, if we do nothing, every decade of our life, we lose between 10 and 15% of muscle tone, muscle mass. So we get de-strengthened by that if we do nothing. We also know from studies that if we exercise physically, any age, muscle mass increases. There was a famous study in Japan, which has some of the largest number of people who live over 90. They got this guy who was 95 and put him through a 3-year training course so he can speed up and run the 100-meter course, right? 100 meters. Yeah. So he started training at 95, and by 98, he had actually improved his speed, muscle tone, muscle mass, and bone strength. If the human body can respond to exercise at 95 and improve and give us greater strength, greater speed, so 3 years later, you actually have a measurable improvement. Certainly, if we never give up, if we constantly do things, we're going to place ourselves in such a good place as we age, so that as we inevitably get older, we don't get old. We don't lose that spark of life. We don't lose the joy we have in living.
Yeah, that's interesting, focusing on the emotional aspect versus, for me, my way and method and what I try to teach clients is you need to stay excited about it. Obviously, it was an emotional moment that got them to me and into fitness, but my methodology is not to keep attacking that emotional aspect. How do you keep excited? I tell them you need to start tracking stuff, journaling stuff, listening to podcasts, go on YouTube, watch different types of exercises. As soon as you lose that allure, they'll start downgrading their workouts, lose interest. So that's how I try to keep them excited. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe I should be focusing just on that.
No, I think, first of all, excitement is an emotion.
Yeah.
Right. And and what do we know? We know that every emotional response we have is essentially a neurochemical reaction that takes part in our brain, which activates specific centers of the brain. If you get somebody excited, essentially, there's an element of joy in it. Certainly, we get serotonin and noradrenaline and dopamine in a certain mix, which are involved in a kind of state. So this is a nice way to approach things and make things feel good. So there's an element of emotionality in what you do with your clients. I think, however, in what you said, and you're quite right in your own experience on this, you find it difficult to maintain that because it comes from you're generating it for them and they like it to have you to make your life easier and make their life easier. If they were to also make that connection in how they see themselves in their identity, instead of abdicating some of the responsibility for their fitness to you, it makes it difficult for you to constantly maintain that level of excitement for them all the time because they undergo their own changes, their values change in terms of how they see some things and see other things, and what kind of value they ascribe to the effort involved and what they get in return. Yeah. So you constantly have to do the hard work for them, in addition to training them, right?
Exactly. No, I would definitely love to push something like that onto them because it's better for them growing into their 70s, 80s, 90s. They're not going to have me forever. So I definitely want to drill that concept into them. So David, why don't you take us through like the built to last concept of going through the ages? Is that the first thing you work on, having them look at their future self? No, they need to get help.
The very first thing, I'm glad you brought this up. Okay, the first chapter is helping the reader understand what fitness means to them. Yeah. It means different things to everybody. We are all relatively unique in how we see the world. We're unique in how we are fashioned inside ourselves. And we're unique in the kind of values we ascribe to what we want to do. If you say, what's fitness to you? And you say, I've always been fit all my life. I want to be able to do those things. Then you pose the same question to somebody else. And they'll say, I want to be able to pick up my grandkids. That's when things begin to get very interesting, because once you define what is important to you, then you begin to understand that you value something, even if you don't understand why. So you got to say, okay, if that's important to me, then why is it important? So if somebody wants to get to their 80s and have a six-pack, for whatever reason, but it's important to them, if that's of real value to them, and they totally get that it is, then they'll be prepared, once they understand why, to put in the work, because they prize it. If it's something abstract, they rely on you to push them, and that has a shelf-life, which is limited. They'll do it for X number of weeks, X number of months, and then they're going to drop off. Same thing as we get older. The things that we actually value begin to change. The key thing, which is common to all ages, is to be able to enjoy life, to feel alive in our own body, to feel that our body doesn't trap us, to feel that our body isn't holding us back if we want to do something. What we want to do and how we feel about it is going to be different from every age group, but defining that and then working towards it is the same in concept for everybody. And that's what the book helps people understand.
But I imagine it's very similar to the processes I see of how I have to constantly excite these clients. I'm only going to be around so long. It's just the nature of personal training and paying for instructor and all that. And then time and time again, I see former clients fall apart. There was only so much I could do. Even for myself as I'm aging, I'll start getting a little lazier, start cutting down some of my workouts. But I have the luxury of being in this industry and constantly talking to people like you, constantly getting excited. Even personal trainers need personal trainers because it's hard to stay on this path. So imagine the normal rank and file out there. They have to constantly go back through the book or go back through the program to get re-engaged or before that emotional moment that triggers most people. Hopefully you don't keep constantly getting these emotional triggers to get back in.
And again, I think your experience and the way you outline it is exactly what's happening. It's invaluable, granular reality. How do we actually address that? And how have I addressed it in the book?
Yeah.
Well, this is what I've done. Essentially, the journey, fitness is a journey, not a destination, right? It's not like, oh, I've arrived. You never do. As you say yourself, you're in the industry and you're constantly evolving. And it's no different for the rest of us. And when we evolve like that, it is important to understand for us, right, inside us, that this is fine. Our goals are going to change. Our capabilities are going to change. Available time is going to change, which means how we train is going to change. What isn't going to change fundamentally is the sense of control that we seek to have over our own body. And that's going to be a little bit different in degree, how we feel about it. When you're in your 20s, you could do incredible things without thinking about it. And then you could go for a couple of days without sleep, right? And again, it wouldn't affect you. As you get older, this is not true. Your workouts take longer to recover from. The amount of care you spend on your body takes longer because you can feel you're not as tolerant as you were in the past. This is the same for everybody as we age, but that's why fitness is a journey. We're all different stages of that journey, but we all want the same thing. We all want to have the kind of sense of control of our own physicality. And that is where the emotionality of it comes in. If we don't unite what we feel inside ourselves with the physical shell which we inhabit, then we are left to sort of a dichotomy that addresses something in a functional manner, which doesn't help us in the long term.
I think everyone should be going to their doctor, doing annual visits and looking at their blood work. It's not a huge emotional hit, but still, for me, I'm looking at that with a longevity tooth comb and through all my markers. Some basis that everyone should be on there. Like, okay, you just got your report card back from your doctor. Now envision yourself 10, 20 years from now going at this rate. This is not looking good to where you wanted to envision yourself. So I would think that would be a good one. I'll see people get it. I'll work on it later. And we see that all through America.
It's basic responsibility, right?
Yeah.
What you said, I said. And this is what I tell people. If you, throughout your life, are shadowed by a Michelin star chef, a great physical trainer, and a psychologist, you're going to be an amazing human being.
How do we all get that?
Well, exactly. And that's what we all need. But none of us have it. We need to wear those hats. We need to actually, as you say, step up, take responsibility, say, okay, I got to get my physicals, right? I've got to understand what it actually means rather than just look at them and nod. Depending on what I see, I need to set some targets which are measurable. Maybe it's blood pressure. I need to bring it down. Maybe it's my cardiovascular fitness. I need to increase it. Maybe it's muscle density. Maybe it's weight. We know the figures are pretty grim. The World Health Organization is actually forecasted by the year 2050, which is 25 years from now. Half the world's adult population is going to be either overweight or obese. I mean, it's tragic. And why is this happening? It's happening at a time when we have more access to information than ever before. We have more access to equipment than ever before. Globally, we spend almost $1 trillion a year on fitness equipment and courses. And it's still not working. Well, there's a fundamental disconnect. It's not lack of access. It's not lack of willpower. I mean, we know that every year, January, February, March, until mid-March, gyms are full of people coming in to train, and then they begin to drop off. By the end of March, we only have about 35% of those. So 65% have dropped off. When we see those figures, we understand that what's happening is deeper than just, oh, I don't have access. I don't know what to do. It's the disconnect between who we are and what we want. It becomes very easy to accept from popular culture this idea of ideal fitness, which is unrealistic. We see it in the movies, we see it in posters, and it's not that. And sometimes we aspire to it, but it also puts us off because we know we can't be like that. The back of our brain, we think, okay, I want to be like that, but can't, right? I can't put in the time. I haven't got the equipment. I haven't got the know-how. I don't have the personal trainer. I don't have the money to go to the gym forever, which is true. So let's make them all go away. And let's say, what can you do? Let's start from that. And with the things that you can do, what do you want to achieve? And again, build from that.
Yeah.
And I think if we keep it real like that, it becomes very real for us.
Yep, I agree. You know, it's funny. My wife and I always talk about like all the different generations. And it seems like for some weird reason, Gen Z has finally like accepted at an early age, better than all the rest of us generations did, overall wellness and not drinking as much, eating better food, not eating as much fast food, and watching those industries start declining. And like, wow, okay, that might be the future right there. And let's see if the next generations keep on that. But then, like you said, in 25 years, we got boomers finishing up their lives. We got Gen X is probably not the greatest at it. Millennials, I don't know much about millennials in fitness, but so I do agree that like the next 25 years, we're going to be in that pandemic. But I think with Gen Z and everything fresh, maybe it does make the turn. So my goal is to get everyone now, work on this together and get this pandemic before it hits in 25 years for sure. It's interesting to see that, all this stuff with podcasts and social media about health is starting to work on the young ones.
Yeah. I should bring up Gen Z because they are arguably one of the generations exposed to the most extreme stress, right? They went through the pandemic. They went through where there's global lockdowns. Before that, there was a crisis they grew up with where had a financial crisis.
Oh yeah, 2008 crash.
Exactly. Yeah, which is really traumatic. They are growing up expecting their prospects not to be better than their parents. They're seeing a world which is not really fashioned for them and they have to navigate it. So they're under constant stress. And to their credit, they're also taking ownership of their own mental health, which is reflected on a better fitness journey. The only other generation which mirrors that pressure they experienced is baby boomers. They grew up under terrible conditions, uncertain future, uncertain situations. They turned out to be one of the most effective generations, most consequential generations of our times in terms of what they achieved, how they took ownership of their own lives, the world around them, and certainly how they handled themselves. And they continue to be, statistically, the largest segment of the population that addresses their fitness. We see now two generations that are separated by quite a number of years, and they are responding in a very similar way to the fact that they experience so many pressures and stresses from the external world, which makes an interesting point. But the ones in between, having access to fairly equal amounts of information, because they had a better life, it became a little more laid back, which makes perfect sense, right? Because we're all fallible human machines. We always respond to the pressures of the external world and the environmental pressures we face. So, and they affect their internal world in turn. It's fascinating.
I think Gen X never had the worry about fight or flight because nothing was really going on.
I know, right? Everything seemed to be going better and better for them. It's always fascinating to see this. But also, I think it shows how for all the things we achieve, we're not that smart. We make dumb decisions and we have to become smart, right? Because we say, oh, we're going to be okay. We know, I think because we're okay now. And things are going to be okay because they're okay now. And there's absolutely zero guarantee that this is going to continue if we don't put in the work now.
Yep, I agree. So David, tell us more about the book without giving it all away. I mean, obviously you got to get the mindset going, and I quickly looked at it, and very efficient workouts is what you were promoting, and also age specific workouts, the structure of the book.
It's a complete package. I'm hoping it's going to be a stepping stone. Yep. Go through it, you become better, and then you just get better on your own. But if you don't know where to start, it's the perfect way to start. It helps you understand yourself, it helps you understand how your mind works, helps you understand how things trip you up psychologically. There are tips there on how to get around these things and actually get things done your way. It allows us to understand why we are the way we are because of the external world. Throughout every chapter, there are 12 workouts. There are 8 workouts you can choose, which are of varying difficulty. And you can basically customize them to your level because each one can be done at level 1, level 2, or level 3. There's also 4 mini workouts. So if you don't have a lot of time for whatever reason, you can say, I can do this. And some of them take just a couple of minutes. Yeah. So it's basically a blueprint on how to make fitness fit your life instead of the other way around.
I love it. If you had to pick 3 fitness hacks or tips or 3 things that you wish you knew earlier up till your age now, just for fun, what were the 3 things that kind of pop out the most at you?
Okay, great question. 3 things. I'd wish I knew how important breath work is. I've been doing martial arts all my life. Breath work is part of it. We never knew how important it was to breathe in certain ways to decompress yourself when you're off the mat or not training. We know today that if you take a really deep breath, no matter how stressed you are, it activates the vagus nerve, which then activates the parasympathetic nervous system. And that basically brings you back down to baseline from whatever stress levels you experienced, right? Yeah. And not only that, but there's a double sigh, what it's called, where you take a deep breath, fill up your lungs, expand the diaphragm. When you think you can't hold anymore, take another half breath. Hold it for 2 seconds and then slowly exhale. Okay, so that is one of them. Second thing, I wish I knew earlier the importance of sleep, right? Because for most of my life, I got by in about 4 hours sleep and
of course,
burning a candle at both ends, right? And we now know that it affects how the brain ages. We know it affects how the body ages. it affects your prospects as you get older in terms of getting mental illnesses like Alzheimer's or dementia and so on. So that definitely I could have done with that knowledge a lot earlier, though I do meditate and meditate most of my life. But I'm hoping now I can make up for the deficit.
Yeah, well, that's what we're all hoping.
And the third thing is, I wish I had structured my training to be a little bit gentler, okay? Because I was going hell for leather and I fell easily into this trap because I was competing. And when I stopped competing, I continued to work out like that, which is not a very good way to take care of your body. It brings your performance up and you think you're fit, which you are, but you're not necessarily healthy. And we need to stress that fit and healthy sometimes are not the same thing.
Yeah.
And we need to make them the same thing. Being kind to myself was something I had to learn. And I wish I'd known it better.
Yeah. You know,
earlier.
Same thing for me, being a personal trainer in my 20s, lifting as heavy as we could, the Arnold Schwarzenegger way, and didn't grasp this theory till later that it's not just about mechanical load and micro tears in your muscles to make them bigger, because that's all we were focused on. Whether you agree with that approach, you can't tell 20-year-olds what to do, right? This is what we wanted. However, knowing what I know now, I could have gotten the same or better with half the amount of effort, a little bit more focus on recovery. And we just didn't get that at that point. Now, of course, we're all paying the price.
But to be fair, we didn't have all that knowledge either.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so now we do.
We had it working and we went with it. Well, cool. David, any final thoughts for our audience before we get into how to get your book? Are you on any social media channels?
I mean, people listening to this right now are probably at different stages of your life. And some of you may not have had a very good relationship with exercise, and it's fine. And you're wondering, is it too late? And I'll tell you for sure, and we have countless studies on this, it is never too late. You can start exercising, you can start working out at 60, and by 63, you're going to be a different person. You can start working out at 70, and by 73, you'll be a different person. So it's not too late to start, no matter how old you are.
Well spoken. David, just thanks once again for coming on my show. And as my audience knows, we'll put all the links in the show notes to your book, your website. Do you have any social media handles that you're currently running?
Yeah, I am. Well, you can find me at davidamerland.com, where all my writing is. And I share a lot of stuff there. If you Google me, all my socials come up because I'm everywhere. So, and I do share a lot of stuff.
Awesome. Well, great. Just love the fact that there's so many people out there putting content out, writing books. I look to people who are older than me that have a little bit more wisdom. I appreciate everything you're doing and everyone else that's promoting health and wellness. It's not just for Gen Z. We can do it too over 40.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. I had a lot of fun doing this, and it's an invaluable podcast you're putting out. I think the message needs to be heard.